What's up? It's Andy Grammer with Jag.
Hi, this is Carly Rae Jepsen, and you're listening to Jag.
Hey everybody, it's Joe Jonas hanging with Jag.
This is Heather Knox with the hottest Jag I've ever seen.
Ryan Seacrest with Jag.
It's B.O.B. checking in with my homie Jag. So much swag with my homie Jag.
It's the Jag Show podcast.
Welcome in, I am John Jag. I'm going to start with today's tip of the week, which is that your show is a race car. And I'm, full disclosure, not any kind of a NASCAR fan or anything like that at all. In fact, I went to the Daytona 500 once and it got rained out. Longest day ever. But anyway, Ben Hamilton was one of my early mentors in radio when I worked at a station called 95 XXX up in Vermont. Ben was very well known for developing talent. And he told me that doing a radio show, or in this case a podcast, is like driving a NASCAR. He was not a NASCAR fan either. But the idea is simple. You do all your work in the pit, so that when the race starts, all you have to do is drive the car. For me, that meant prepping my first hour of phone calls the night before. It meant knowing every single time I cracked the mic what I was going to do. Was I going to talk about a contest? Was I going to talk about something happening with celebrity gossip? Was I going to talk about the weather? Whatever it was, I had the blueprint for the show. How does that translate for me for podcasting now? Now, everybody's different the way they prep a show. Some people, like my guest this past Tuesday, Brian Drake, wing it and do a great job. Others script the entire thing, and the danger there is if you're not careful, you can sound like you're reading. I fell victim to that when I was scripting out a couple of podcasts when I first started doing this. And it was my lovely wife who pointed it out that it sounded like I was reading. So what I do now to prep my show, and I prep both shows each week two different ways because they're two different styles of show. The 5 Minute Friday show that you're hearing right now, I actually write my show notes first. And then I pull them up on the screen and refer back to them. These are mainly for any links and podcast news stories I want to include. But it gives me a rough bullet point outline of what I want to talk about in the show without putting an entire script in there that I'm going to sound like I'm reading. So that's why I do it as bullet points. For my Tuesday show, when I have a guest, I actually do write out or type out the intro for the show. I do read that, and then from there I've got bullet points of questions I want to ask. And if the guest says something interesting that's not on my list, I might make a note. Or just remember to come back to that and ask. So it works differently for everybody, but my best suggestion would be know where you're going to start, where you're going to end, and how you're going to get there. Bullet points I find to be the most effective. Individual results may vary. Some quick hits on podcasting news this week. YouTube listening is down, but YouTube Music is soon going to replace Google Play Music in order to make a run at Spotify so that the Google YouTube conglomerate can really try to make a run at Spotify. That link is in the show notes. Great, interesting story from Edison Research. An event called Podthon 20 is this weekend. It is a virtual summit for podcasters. It is this Saturday and Sunday. Podcasting revenue, some interesting numbers here from the IAB, that's the Interactive Advertising Bureau. Podcasting advertising revenue grew faster than expected in 2019, up to $700 million. Now, there was an expectation that number would hit $1 billion here in 2020, but that has obviously slowed down because of COVID. Probably not going to hit $1 billion in 2020. It'll be sometime in 2021. Bottom line, it's growing, and it's growing very quickly. Speaking of big numbers, SiriusXM buying Stitcher. That deal is now officially done. The final price tag for Stitcher, $325 million. In other news, Nick Cannon has lost his deal with CBS Viacom Television. Why? Because of comments he made in his podcast. Now, to borrow a line from Office Space, I've always found Nick Cannon to be a no-talent ass clown to begin with. But as a Jewish person, anti-Semitic comments that he made on his podcast, I'm glad it cost him his gig. The moral of the story, of course, being, don't say anything in your podcast that you don't want your parents or your boss to eventually hear. Once something's on the internet, it's there forever. Spotify has announced they are now available in 13 more countries, including Russia, just in time for another presidential election. But only the music will be available in Russia. Spotify podcasts will not be available in Russia. I doubt Mr. Putin wants Joe Rogan flapping his gums over there. One final note, big thank you to the Birmingham Bloomfield Chamber of Commerce here in Metro Detroit. They let me do a 30-minute podcasting webinar over Zoom called Podcasting 101. Try to cover everything that I get asked by people who are starting podcasts in that quick 30-minute session. Took a lot of Q&A as well. If you want to see that, got the YouTube link in the show notes. Also on my social media at Jag in Detroit. Coming up this Tuesday, I am talking with one of the heavy hitters in the podcasting industry, Mr. Rob Greenlee. He is the VP of Content and Partnerships at Libsyn and also chair of the new Podcast Academy. So that'll drop this Tuesday morning. As always, stay healthy, stay safe, have a great weekend, and I will talk to you on Tuesday. Later.
Thanks for listening to the Jag Show podcast. If you like what you heard, be sure to subscribe in Apple, Spotify, Google, or wherever you get your podcasts. New episodes are published every Tuesday and Friday morning. For help with your podcast, find Jag on social media at Jag in Detroit or on the web at jagindetroit.com.